The stoke is high on
The stoke was
Monday.
high. It's a Monday. Who knows what day it is when you listen, but the stoke was still high.
Yeah. So, this is a
So
great time of year to be talking about why is this or isn't this product displaying on my website?
yes, because the season's heating up and
Mhm.
people will find things on your website. It's sometimes inconvenient, but it proves it works because they will find everything on your website. So, why is or why isn't this particular item in question showing up on your website? Let's start with the why is.
Yeah.
So, there's a product showing up on the website that you don't think should be there. It does vary based on the package. So, if you're on
Mhm.
professional, versus local. Because if you're on local, we use the point of sale data to decide and populate what's on the website. We only use the warehouse data to fill in the blank. So you have to have at least one SKU or one variation of an item in stock. And then we'll fill in those other SKUs and variations of that item with warehouse data. So that makes it a little simpler.
Mhm.
If it's showing up on the website and you're on local, it's a pretty good chance maybe your inventory was off a bit. And so you know that thing's not in the store, but the data we get from your point of sale system suggests that it is. And so maybe that it didn't get rung up correctly, or there's one extra, or there was a return or something, but check that. So check that first.
Mhm.
And you can see that in, let's see, I think what I showed was, yeah. So if you go to your site and you get here, and you see these little green boxes and black boxes. The green boxes are POS data. The black boxes are supplier data. Supplier data.
Mhm.
And so if we click that little green box, then you'll see here that this is the POS data. So this is what's coming from your POS system. You'll see this quantity on hand. So if it's showing up and you don't think it should, and you're on local, the very first place to look is this. And so you can, of course, you could go straight to your POS and look. So if it's not in the store, but there's a quantity on hand greater than zero, then that's probably why it's showing up.
Mhm. Those are my favorite little cheat sheet boxes when you're looking at why is this thing here, not here?
Yeah,
Why is this price here? All
they're
that good
very
stuff.
handy.
Yeah.
And you can when you're looking at this in inventory and inventory and products, then if you're on Pro, you have an item showing up on your website, but it's not here. It's not in the product section, and that's because it's showing up because of supplier sync often.
Mhm.
And so you can come here and say, well, here in supplier sync, let's say I don't know, a part tool, something or other showing up. That could come from multiple suppliers. So if that supplier is enabled, that could be where it's coming from. Now you can use these exclusion settings to exclude things. So maybe you don't want those park whatever showing up. You can exclude those here. But that's probably the most probable. It can still be that the POS data is driving it because with Pro we are using POS data to drive it. But
Mhm.
there's a new wrinkle in that on professional with supplier sync, we will display items to the warehouse regardless of whether you have a SKU or a variation of that item in your POS data. The
Mhm.
other wrinkle, which could have a product showing up on your website when you don't have it in stock, is that on Pro you can go into the library here and you can manually import things. So maybe it's an item that isn't available via supplier sync. It's some brand that you want to show customers that you can get for them. So you go manually import this. You don't have them in stock. It's not a supplier sync item, so it's not showing up that way, but you manually went and imported it and then forgot about it. So
Mhm.
that could be it, that it's showing up because it was manually imported. You can also, you can search those things. If you go to products and use these little filters, you can say, show me all the products to this mapped POS. Show me products that are not mapped. So POS map, no, and that'll display items that are displaying in the catalog or in the catalog, not necessarily displaying. If you want to show display, you can click that. So displaying in the catalog mapped, no. These items are displaying on your website, but they're not mapped to the POS data. And so that's a good chance that you'll forget about these and years later somebody finds it and wants to try and buy it and you can't get it anymore. So it's a good idea to keep these cleaned up. There is a good reason sometimes to have unmapped items, that scenario where it's a brand we don't have supplier sync for, so you want to show them. But then it does require some manual management to make sure you don't leave something there that isn't really available.
Yeah, because those items are sticky. So
Yes, they are very sticky
yeah.
because we're not connected to anything. So we're
Yep.
not doing where if it's POS sync mapped, then if it goes out of stock based on your import and display rules, we'll get rid of it automatically.
Mhm.
So there's some good reasons why things might show up that you don't want to show up on the website. But what about the other question? Why isn't this item showing up
Yeah.
on the website? So typically, that will be driven by the POS data. And so if it's not showing up on the website and you think it should based on your POS data, I guess the first question to ask is, do we even have it in our library? Because we have to have that item in our library here. Oh, whoops,
Mhm.
here in
Mhm.
order for it to show up. So if you're on professional, you can go here and search. If you're on local, you really can't. But that's the first question: is do we have that item? So if you have some maybe a niche e-bike brand, maybe we don't have that brand in the catalog. So you'll have it in the POS. It's all correct, but we don't have a matching item. So that's an option. And you can
Mhm.
email if you're not sure how to check that. You can always check in with client success at support at workstand.com and they'll verify that for you. The other scenario is that the UPC and or part number you have isn't doesn't match what we have because we require that match, either a UPC or a part number, in order to connect it to what we have in our library. So you can always check that. What UPC code are you using versus what UPC code do we have? And a lot of times you can. Oh, and one other part of that is, let's say, on part numbers, manufacturers' part numbers, we never automatically map those. We will automatically map a UPC code. So if you have a UPC code in red and it's a one-to-one match, in this case, there's a duplicate SKU, but we'll automatically map those. So you don't do anything with those. But these black ones, when they're in black like this versus red, these are manufacturers' part numbers, and we never automatically map those because a lot of brands use the same part number
Yeah.
over and over again.
They're not
So
unique. Mhm.
it's not unique, correct? And so we require you to come in and complete this mapping. So if it's something new that you think should be showing up and you use part numbers versus UPCs, which please use UPCs when available because they are unique, then it could be hung up here in pending mapping. So keep your pending mapping. Like for instance, in this little demo site, this is not good to have this many pages of pending mapping. This means probably lots of stuff that could be displaying on the website isn't. So this is
Mhm.
the first stop, I think, for why isn't this item showing up on my website. Uh, what else? Why is it? I'm
What
gonna.
about, so you've got it. Okay, so we've covered POS part, and then I guess in kind of in the reverse part of looking at is supplier sync. Maybe you've excluded.
Oh, good point. Yep. So that's a really good point. Maybe something's not showing up that you think should, and it's because you have excluded that. And let's cover one common thing. Sometimes we come here and we'll see 100 categories excluded, and that indicates a very understandable mistake. So when we
Mhm.
come here and we check a box, we check the box to enable a supplier. But in exclusion settings, we're checking boxes to exclude things. And so sometimes people get that backwards, which again is understandable because it's a little confusing. So if I check this box, I'm not enabling electric bicycles, I'm excluding electric bicycles. And so make sure you haven't either just you wanted to exclude it at one point. Now you don't. Go back and unexclude it by unchecking the box. But also make sure you haven't made that small mental error, which happens a lot. Because again, in one place you're checking a box to include something, and in one place you're checking a box to exclude something. So it's
Yeah.
hard to keep that straight. But that's a really good point. Sometimes it's just excluded. Sometimes it's excluded by brand on purpose because
Mhm.
we default exclude brands that require dealer agreements to be in place before a merchant can sell them, regardless of where they buy the item. So whether you buy it directly from, in this case, Camelback, or you're buying it through a supplier like J&B or QBP or HLC, you have to have that dealer agreement in place before you're allowed to display and sell products. And so we automatically exclude these. So if it's one of those brands, check that. So if you're all set up for Chris King, that's fine. It's an honor system. Just turn it off and save the change. And now Chris King stuff will start showing up on the website. I have to admit, I've lost track of all the things we've talked about. So I'm not really sure if we covered all the bases. Um, if we haven't, remember that there is a handy dandy troubleshooting guide in um, the Help Center. So, troubleshooting products. This will walk you through that difference between professional and local. That'll walk you through the products in your POS, but not on your website,
Mhm.
and some troubleshooting steps based on whether you're using one POS or the other.
Nice.
And then if you really want to get deep into it, there is
Mhm.
a file that we all that each system has called the mapping report that gets in and shows all the different fields from your point of sale data where we've mapped it to the library and which ones are mapped and which ones aren't. And that really can help if you really want to get deep in there and find how many other things could I get displaying on the website. That'll
Mhm.
really help you get deep into that.
Nice. I didn't know that was there.
It is very handy. And I think the
Mhm.
other thing I would recommend at this point, because it is so driven by point of sale, if you're using an external POS, you're not using our POS,
Mhm.
this how to manage your POS data is very helpful because there's that pending mapping that we looked at. You know, are
Yeah.
these things connected the way they should, or is there some completion of a mapping I need to do for a particular SKU?
Mhm.
That's important. There's a thing called missing and mismatched SKUs when things disappear from that POS data and we don't know why they disappeared. And then there's just some catalog maintenance on how do I make sure I have as few of these unmapped SKUs as possible to keep the data clean. This little video and this help center page will walk you through how to make sure you're managing your POS correctly. And as a self-serving promotional bit, that is a big part of what the maintenance program does. It does that
Mhm.
for you, everyone. So our account coordinators can manage that for you if it's just too much to keep track of. It is very important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So I think today, more than most days, I feel like we could easily have missed something.
There's a lot of parts to it. But I think that troubleshooting guide is a great place to start, kind of walk through some of those steps. I think we gave some of the biggest and most likely
Yeah.
reasons, places to check kind
As
of thing.
always, if you have more questions, you can reach out to support or client
Mhm.
success at support@workstand.com. You can chat with them from workstand.com. You can email them, you can call them. Always leave voicemails. If they don't pick up, they try and pick up, but they first in, first out. So if you leave a
Yep.
voicemail, that's the quickest way to get a call back. If they don't answer, which often they answer. And then, of course, you can always email me and Susie at
Yeah.
podcast@workstand.com.
We'd love that.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see you.
We'll see you.
Do, do, do. I was very distracted today because the interface